Marcus Chen wiped the sweat from his forehead as he guided his salvage ship through the debris field. 3 months of deep space scavenging had yielded nothing but scrap metal and broken dreams. The fuel gauge blinked red, a constant reminder that he was running on borrowed time. His small craft, the Iron Will, groaned under the strain of its overworked engines. The distress beacon cut through the static like a knife through silence. Marcus almost ignored it. Distress signals in the outer rim usually meant pirates laying traps for desperate fools like himself. But something about the frequency pattern made him pause. It wasn't human technology, and it wasn't any of the known alien signatures in his database. "Computer, analyze that signal," Marcus commanded, his weathered hands steady on the controls despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "Unknown origin. Pattern suggests extreme distress. Source is approximately 2,000 kilometers off starboard bow." The AI responded in its mechanical tone. Marcus stared at the scanner display, watching the blinking dot that represented potential salvation or certain death. In his 5 years working the outer rim, he had learned that curiosity killed more spacers than engine failures and asteroid collisions combined. But desperation had a way of making even the most cautious men take foolish risks. The ship that came into view defied everything Marcus knew about spacecraft design. Where human vessels were angular and practical, this craft flowed like liquid metal frozen in motion. Its hull shimmered with an opalescent quality that seemed to shift colors as his ship's lights played across its surface. Despite its alien beauty, the vessel was clearly in distress. Massive gashes in its hull leaked atmosphere in glittering streams, and several sections were completely dark. As Marcus maneuvered closer, his proximity sensors detected a single life sign aboard the dying ship. The readings were unlike anything in his medical database, but the pattern of failing vital signs was universal. Someone was dying in there. "This is Marcus Chen of the salvage vessel Iron Will responding to your distress call. Do you copy?" He broadcast on multiple frequencies, hoping the universal translator protocols would bridge any communication gap. Silence answered him for long moments before a weak signal crackled through his speakers. The voice was melodic, almost musical, but the pain was unmistakable even through the translation matrix. "Please, help me. My ship is dying. I cannot reach the escape systems." Marcus felt his heart clench. The voice belonged to someone young, someone afraid. In the harsh reality of space, death was always close, but hearing it approach through the speakers of his ship made it real in a way that statistics never could. "I'm coming aboard. Can you make it to an airlock?" "Negative. I am trapped in the medical bay. Hull breach has sealed the corridor. I think I am dying." Marcus studied the alien ship schematics that his scanner had assembled. The medical bay was deep in the ship's core, surrounded by twisted metal and depressurized compartments. Any rescue attempt would be incredibly dangerous, possibly suicidal. The smart move would be to offer what comfort he could over the radio and then continue on his way. But Marcus Chen had never been accused of being smart. "Hold tight. I'm coming to get you." He spent precious minutes gathering his gear. The emergency cutting torch, portable life support unit, and his grandfather's old mining suit that had seen him through more dangerous situations than he cared to count. The suit was ancient by modern standards, but it was built for the kind of abuse that mining asteroids required. If anything could get him through a collapsing alien ship, it would be this relic. The docking proved impossible. The alien vessel's airlocks were incompatible with human designs, and the hull was too damaged to risk a direct seal. Marcus was forced to cut his way in through one of the smaller breaches, welding a temporary pressure seal behind him as he worked deeper into the ship.
The interior was a maze of flowing corridors that seemed to follow organic principles rather than engineering logic.
Emergency lighting cast everything in an eerie blue glow that made shadows dance at the edge of his vision.
The air was thin but breathable, though his suit's sensors detected exotic particles that would probably kill him slowly if he survived the next hour. Following his scanner's life sign readings, Marcus navigated through sections where gravity seemed to shift direction without warning. Water floated in impossible spirals through the corridors, and he passed chambers filled with equipment that looked more grown than manufactured. Everything about this ship challenged his understanding of technology and physics. The medical bay door was sealed shut, its alien control panel dark and unresponsive. Marcus positioned his cutting torch carefully, knowing that one wrong move could destabilize the entire section. The metal parted like butter under the focused plasma beam, revealing a chamber filled with soft, bioluminescent light. She was unlike anything he had ever imagined. Her skin was a pale blue that seemed to glow from within, marked with intricate silver patterns that reminded him of frost on a window. Her hair fell in waves of deep purple that shifted to black at the tips, and her eyes were large and luminous, filled with pain and fear that transcended species. She was humanoid but clearly not human, and beautiful in a way that made his chest tight. She was also dying. Medical equipment that he couldn't begin to understand surrounded her, but the readings were clear enough. Her life signs were failing, and whatever was keeping her alive was running out of power. "Hey there," Marcus said softly, keeping his movements slow and non-threatening. "I'm here to help." Her eyes focused on him with visible effort, and she tried to speak. The words came out in her musical language before the translator caught up. "You came." "I did not think humans were capable of such kindness to strangers. You'd be surprised what we're capable of when we try." Marcus began disconnecting her from the alien medical equipment, his training as a mining engineer helping him understand the basic principles even if the technology was foreign.
"What's your name?"
"Lyra of the Seventh Haven. I was a researcher studying primitive cultures in this sector." "Primitive cultures? That's a little insulting," Marcus said with a smile, trying to keep her conscious through conversation while he worked. "I'm Marcus Chen, and I'm going to get you out of here." Lyra's laugh was weak but genuine. "Your ship design suggests a civilization that has barely achieved interstellar capability. By galactic standards, you are quite primitive. But perhaps there is something to be said for primitive courage." Marcus carefully lifted her from the medical bed, surprised by how light she felt. Her body was warm against his suit, and he could feel her shivering despite the environmental controls. Whatever was wrong with her, it was getting worse by the minute. The journey back to his ship was a nightmare of collapsing corridors and failing life support. Twice sections of the hull gave way just moments after they passed through, and Marcus had to use his cutting torch to clear blocked passages. Lyra drifted in and out of consciousness, occasionally murmuring words in her own language that the translator couldn't parse. By the time they reached the Iron Will, the alien ship was beginning to break apart. Marcus sealed the airlock just as a massive section of hull tore away, taking half the vessel with it into the void. He had cut the timing closer than he cared to admit. His ship's medical bay was primitive compared to what Lyra had been connected to, but it was functional. Marcus did what he could with human medical knowledge while his computer attempted to analyze her physiology. The results were disturbing. Computer analysis indicates massive system shock consistent with prolonged exposure to quantum radiation. Unknown alien physiology prevents detailed diagnosis. Marcus studied the readings, his basic medical training feeling woefully inadequate. Will she survive? Insufficient data for accurate prognosis. For the next 6 hours, Marcus stayed by her side, monitoring her vital signs and doing what little he could to keep her comfortable. He had no idea if human medicines would help or harm her, so he focused on basic care. Temperature regulation, hydration, and simply being present when she woke up afraid and disoriented. During one of her lucid periods, Lyra gripped his hand with surprising strength. "Why did you save me? Your species and mine, we have never met before this moment. I could be dangerous to you. I could carry diseases that would kill you. Yet you risked your life for a complete stranger." Marcus considered the question seriously. It wasn't the first time someone had asked him why he took unnecessary risks to help others. His ex-wife had asked the same thing before she left him for someone more stable, more predictable. "Because it was the right thing to do," he said finally. "Because you asked for help and I could give it. Because somewhere in the galaxy maybe someone would do the same for me or for someone I cared about." Such a simple answer. Lyra whispered. "Yet I suspect it contains depths that even you do not fully understand." She fell back into unconsciousness before Marcus could ask what she meant. As his ship limped toward the nearest human outpost, Marcus found himself spending more and more time in the medical bay. He told himself. He was monitoring her condition, but the truth was more complicated. There was something about Lyra that drew him in ways he couldn't explain. Maybe it was the vulnerability she tried to hide behind scientific curiosity. Maybe it was the way she looked at him like he was something rare and valuable. Or maybe it was simply that in the vast emptiness of space, finding another intelligent being was precious beyond measure, regardless of species. When she woke on the second day, her color was better and her breathing steadier. The worst of the crisis had passed, though Marcus knew she would need proper medical attention soon. "How do you feel?" he asked, adjusting her blanket. "Better. Weak, but better." She studied his face with those luminous eyes. You have been here the entire time, haven't you?
Mostly.
Someone had to keep an eye on you. In my culture, such dedication usually indicates romantic interest or family obligation. Since we are not family, she let the implication hang in the air. Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks. I just wanted to make sure you were okay. And I am grateful. More grateful than you can possibly know. Lyra struggled to sit up, accepting his help when she proved too weak to manage alone. Tell me about yourself, Marcus Chen. What drives a human to work alone in the Outer Rim? It was Marcus's turn to look away. Long story. Not very interesting. I am a xenocultural researcher. All stories about humans are interesting to me, especially stories about humans who display unexpected nobility. So, Marcus found himself talking. About his divorce, about the mining accident that had ended his career and killed 3 of his friends, about the crushing debt that had forced him into salvage work, about the loneliness of deep space and the way it either broke people or made them stronger. Lyra listened without judgment, occasionally asking questions that showed she was really paying attention. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Your species fascinates me, she said finally. You have achieved interstellar travel despite having no telepathic abilities, no natural resistance to radiation, no enhanced physical capabilities. By all logical analysis, humans should be extinct by now. Yet here you are, not just surviving, but thriving in environments that would kill most other species. We're stubborn, Marcus said with a self-deprecating smile. No, it is more than that. Lyra's voice grew thoughtful. I think it is because you do not let logic override compassion. A logical being would have calculated the risks of rescuing me and decided the probability of success was too low to justify the attempt. You did not even hesitate. Maybe I'm just stupid. Perhaps. But if stupidity can produce such nobility, then perhaps intelligence is overrated. They talked through the night cycles, sharing stories and perspectives from their different worlds. Marcus learned that Lyra's people, the Valthara, were part of a vast galactic community that had been observing humanity from a distance for decades. They were fascinated by human unpredictability but had no official contact protocols. We are a careful people, Lyra explained. We observe and study before making contact. It is the prudent approach. How's that working out for you? Marcus asked with gentle humor. Not as well as your approach, apparently. I would be dead if not for human unprudence. As they approached the human outpost at Meridian Station, Marcus felt a growing reluctance to end their journey together. He had enjoyed having someone to talk to, someone who saw his actions not as reckless stupidity, but as something worthwhile. When was the last time someone had made him feel valuable? What will you do when we reach the station? He asked. I will need to contact my people, arrange for transport home. I suspect there will be many questions about my contact with humans. Lyra paused, seeming to wrestle with something. What will you do? Back to salvage work, I guess. Maybe try to make enough to get my ship properly repaired. That seems wasteful. How so? You have capabilities that extend far beyond scavenging debris. You think quickly under pressure, you show remarkable adaptability, and you possess a moral compass that functions even in life-threatening situations. These are rare qualities in the galaxy. Marcus felt that familiar heat in his cheeks again. You don't know me very well. I know that you risked your life to save a complete alien stranger with no expectation of reward. I know that you have spent 3 days caring for someone whose biology you don't understand, using equipment you barely comprehend. I know that you have treated me not as a specimen to be studied, but as a person deserving of dignity and respect. Lyra's voice grew soft. I know enough. Meridian Station appeared on their sensors, a collection of rotating habitation rings and docking spurs that served as humanity's furthest outpost in this sector. Marcus began the approach procedures, his hands working automatically while his mind wrestled with emotions he didn't fully understand. Marcus, Lyra said quietly, I need you to know something. My people, we do not form attachments easily. We are a long-lived race, and we have learned to be cautious about emotional connections. But what you have shown me these past days, it has affected me in ways I did not expect. Marcus's hands stilled on the controls. Lyra, I know it is impossible. We are different species from different worlds, but I wanted you to know that you have given me more than just my life. You have given me hope that the galaxy might be a kinder place than I believed. The docking procedures completed automatically while Marcus struggled with words that seemed inadequate to the moment. When Lyra was taken to the station's medical facility, he felt her absence like a physical ache. But her words stayed with him, along with the memory of luminous eyes that had looked at him and seen something worth saving. As he prepared to leave Meridian Station and return to his solitary work, Marcus Chen found himself wondering if maybe, just maybe, there might be more to his future than endless salvage runs and empty corridors.
Maybe the galaxy was indeed a kinder place than either of them had believed, and maybe, against all logic and probability, their story was just beginning.
3 weeks after leaving Meridian Station, Marcus found himself staring at the same stretch of empty space where he had first encountered Lyra's ship. The debris field had been cleared by automated cleanup drones, leaving nothing but cosmic dust and the ghosts of memory.
He told himself he was here because this sector had proven profitable for salvage work. But even he wasn't convinced by that lie. The truth was simpler and more complicated at the same time. He missed her. The Iron Will felt empty in ways it never had before. Lyra's brief presence. Marcus had grown accustomed to solitude over the years, finding peace in the quiet hum of engines and the predictable routine of salvage work, but now the silence felt oppressive, filled with unspoken words and questions he was afraid to ask. His communication console chimed with an incoming message, startling him from his brooding thoughts. The source code was unfamiliar, but something about the encryption pattern made his heart race. Marcus Chen, of the salvage vessel Iron Will. This is Lyra, of the Seventh Haven. Are you receiving this transmission? Her voice filled the small bridge, melodic and warm, instantly banishing the loneliness that had become his constant companion. Marcus's hands flew to the controls, eager to respond before the signal could fade.
Lyra, yes, I'm here. How did you find me? The joy in his own voice surprised him with its intensity. I have been monitoring human communication networks since my recovery. Your ship's transponder code was not difficult to track. There was something in her voice that suggested she had been looking for him specifically. I hope you do not mind the intrusion. Mind? No. Of course not. How are you feeling? Have you recovered fully? Yes, thanks to your quick thinking and human medical ingenuity.
The doctors at Meridian Station were quite impressed with your emergency treatment. They said my survival was largely due to your care during those critical first hours. Marcus felt a flush of pride at the praise, but it was overshadowed by a deeper concern. Are you back home safe? A pause stretched between them, filled with the subtle static of deep space communication.
When Lyra spoke again, her voice carried a note of uncertainty that was unlike her usual confident demeanor. That is complicated. I am currently aboard a Velfara research vessel in the Outer Rim territories. My people were very interested in my report about human behavior, particularly your rescue operation.
Interested how?
Marcus asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer.
They found your actions statistically improbable to the point of requiring further study. According to our psychological profiles of your species, the logical response to my distress call would have been to ignore it or, at most, offer remote assistance. The fact that you risked your life for a complete alien stranger has challenged several of their fundamental assumptions about human nature. Marcus leaned back in his pilot's seat, processing this information. So I'm some kind of research subject now? Not exactly, but they are very curious about you specifically. They want to understand what motivated your decision and whether your behavior represents a broader trend in human psychology or if you are simply an anomaly. The way she said anomaly made it sound like a positive thing, though Marcus wasn't sure how he felt about being studied like a lab specimen. And what do you think? Another pause, longer this time. I think you are exactly what I told them you were. A good man who saw someone in need and chose to help regardless of the personal cost. But my superiors believe there must be some deeper motivation, some hidden agenda that would make your actions logical rather than purely altruistic. Marcus found himself laughing despite the situation. Sounds like your people think a lot like my ex-wife. She never could believe I did things just because they felt right. Perhaps that is why she is your ex-wife, Lyra said quietly, and there was something in her tone that made Marcus's chest tighten. So what happens now? Are they planning to dissect me for science? Actually, they have a proposition for you. One that I hope you will consider carefully. Marcus straightened in his seat, suddenly alert. What kind of proposition? They want to offer you a position as a cultural liaison between humanity and the Valfara. Your actions have convinced them that direct contact between our species might be beneficial, but they want someone they can trust to facilitate initial communications. Someone who has already proven their good intentions toward our people. The offer was so unexpected that Marcus needed several seconds to process it fully. They want me to be some kind of ambassador? More of a consultant initially. They would provide you with a ship capable of interstellar communication, technological upgrades for your current vessel, and compensation that would allow you to leave salvage work behind permanently. In exchange, you would help them understand human psychology and assist in developing protocols for peaceful first contact. It was an offer that solved every practical problem in Marcus's life. No more struggling to make fuel payments, no more dangerous salvage runs and deteriorating equipment, no more isolation in the Outer Rim territories. It was everything he should want. So why did he find himself hesitating? "There's something you're not telling me," Marcus said, trusting his instincts. Lyra's sigh carried clearly through the communication link. "You know me too well already. Yes, there is more. If you accept their offer, you would be required to relocate to Velfara space for an extended period. Months, possibly years. And there would be restrictions on your contact with other humans during that time to preserve the security of ongoing research." Now Marcus understood his hesitation. They were offering him a gilded cage, albeit one with better amenities than his current situation. "And if I refuse? Then you continue your current life and my people continue observing humanity from a distance. No harm would come to you, of course, but there would be no further contact between us." The unspoken words hung in the space between them. If he refused, he would likely never see Lyra again. If he accepted, he would be trading his freedom for the chance to be near her, with no guarantee that their relationship could develop beyond professional cooperation. "I need time to think about this," Marcus said finally. "Of course. But Marcus, there is something else I must tell you. Something I probably should not say, but I cannot keep it to myself any longer." Her voice grew softer, more personal, and Marcus found himself leaning toward the speaker as if physical proximity could bridge the vast distance between them. "These past weeks apart have been difficult for me. I find myself thinking about our conversations, about the way you looked at me not as a research subject or an exotic alien, but simply as a person worthy of care and respect. I think about your hands holding mine when I was afraid, and your voice keeping me calm when pain threatened to overwhelm me." Marcus's heart hammered against his ribs as she continued. "I know the complications this presents. I know that romantic attachment between species is unprecedented in Velfara history. But I also know that what I feel for you transcends logic and cultural programming. If you accept their offer, it would not be just for the advancement of interspecies relations. It would be because I want the chance to explore what exists between us." The admission hung in the void, like a star-going nova, beautiful and terrifying in its implications. Marcus stared at the communication console, wondering how his life had gone from mundane salvage work to impossible romance with an alien woman in the space of a month. "Lyra," he began, then stopped, unsure how to voice the chaos of emotions churning through him. "You do not need to respond now," she said quickly. "I know this is overwhelming. I simply needed you to know that if you choose to come, it will not just be for duty or compensation. It will be because someone in the galaxy cares about you and wants you near them." After the communication ended, Marcus sat in the silence of his ship, staring out at the stars that suddenly seemed less distant and cold. Everything he had known about his life, his future, his place in the universe had been turned upside down by a chance rescue that had blossomed into something he didn't have words for. The practical side of his mind cataloged the risks. Leaving human space for an unknown period, trusting alien beings whose psychology he barely understood, abandoning the independence that had defined his adult life. The smart money was on polite refusal, and a return to the familiar challenges of salvage work. But then he remembered the weight of Lyra's hand in his, the gratitude in her luminous eyes, the way she had looked at him like he was something precious and rare. He remembered the loneliness that had settled over him like a shroud since leaving Meridian Station, and the way her voice on the communicator had instantly made the universe feel warmer and more welcoming. Marcus activated his navigation computer and began plotting a course for the coordinates Lyra had transmitted. He told himself he was just going to hear their full offer before making a decision, but deep down he knew the choice had already been made. It had been made the moment he heard her voice calling for help in the darkness, and it had been confirmed every day since then by the growing certainty that some chances were worth any risk. 3 days later, the research vessel Star Whisper appeared on his sensors. It was magnificent in the way that Lyra's ship had been, all flowing lines and organic curves that suggested growth rather than construction. But where her vessel had been small and graceful, this was massive, easily 10 times the size of anything in the human fleet. As Marcus approached the designated coordinates, he found himself nervous in ways that had nothing to do with alien contact protocols. He was about to see Lyra again, and he had no idea how to navigate the complex emotions that had developed between them. The docking procedures were surprisingly smooth, with the Star Whisper's automated systems adapting to accommodate his ship's primitive technology. As the airlock sealed behind him, Marcus took a deep breath and stepped into a corridor that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of luminescent crystal. Lyra was waiting for him. She wore a flowing garment that seemed to be made of liquid starlight, and her silver-marked skin glowed softly in the ambient light of the ship. But it was her eyes that captured him, those large, luminous eyes that lit up with unmistakable joy when she saw him. "Marcus," she said, and his name on her lips sounded like music. "Hello, Lyra. You look—" He searched for words adequate to describe her ethereal beauty and settled for simple honesty. "You look incredible." A flush of deeper blue spread across her cheeks, and Marcus realized he was witnessing the alien equivalent of a blush. The thought that he could affect her so visibly sent warmth spreading through his chest. "Come," she said, offering her hand. "There are people who wish to meet you, and decisions that must be made." As their fingers intertwined, Marcus felt a sense of rightness that transcended species and circumstance. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever complications arose from their impossible attraction, he knew he had made the correct choice in coming here. The galaxy was indeed a kinder place than either of them had believed, and sometimes the most important decisions were the ones that made no logical sense at all. They walked hand in hand through corridors that defied human understanding of architecture, toward a future that neither of them could have imagined just a month ago. Behind them, the Iron Will sat in the docking bay, a stubborn reminder of human ingenuity and the courage to help strangers. Ahead of them lay mysteries and possibilities that would challenge everything both species thought they knew about themselves and each other. But for now, in this moment, it was enough that they were together again, two souls who had found each other across the impossible vastness of space. The council chamber aboard the Star Whisper was unlike anything Marcus had ever imagined. The walls seemed to be made of living crystal that pulsed with gentle bioluminescence, responding to the emotions and thoughts of those within. Seats grew from the floor like flowers blooming in fast forward, adjusting themselves to accommodate each occupant's physiology. Marcus found himself sitting in something that felt more like a supportive embrace than furniture. 5 Valthara council members faced him across a circular space that seemed to expand and contract based on the intensity of their discussion. Each was tall and graceful like Lyra, but their skin patterns and coloring varied dramatically. The eldest, whose silver markings had deepened to platinum with age, spoke first. "I am Keeper Thalon, senior researcher aboard this vessel. We have studied your species for 47 standard years, Marcus Chen, and in all that time we have never encountered behavior such as yours." Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his living chair. "I'm not sure I understand what makes what I did so unusual. Where I come from, helping people in distress is just basic decency." A younger council member with green-tinged skin leaned forward. "But you had no logical reason to believe your assistance would be welcomed or even possible. Your technology is primitive by our standards. You risked your life and your vessel for a being whose biology, psychology, and intentions were completely unknown to you." "She was dying," Marcus said simply. Nothing else mattered. The council members exchanged glances that seemed to carry more meaning than Marcus could interpret. Beside him, Lyra squeezed his hand gently, offering support that he was grateful to have. "This is precisely what we find so fascinating," said another council member, this one with deep purple skin marked with gold. "Your emotional response overrode logical analysis completely. By any rational measure, you should have died in that rescue attempt." The probability of success was less than 12%. Marcus frowned. "You calculated the odds?" "We have been analyzing the wreckage of Lyra's ship and the sensor logs from your vessel. The structural damage was far more extensive than even we realized. You navigated through sections that were collapsing in real time, made repairs with inadequate equipment, and performed medical procedures on alien physiology with no training or relevant knowledge. And yet I succeeded," Marcus pointed out.
"Yes," Keeper Thalon said slowly. "You succeeded because you refused to accept failure as an option."
"This suggests that human psychology operates on principles that our models cannot predict or explain." Lyra spoke for the first time since the formal introductions. "Perhaps the issue is not with human psychology but with your models. When I first met Marcus, I too believed that his actions were statistically improbable. But after spending time with him, I realized that what we call improbable, humans call necessary." "Explain," commanded the green-skinned council member. "Humans do not base their decisions solely on probability of success.
They factor in moral imperatives that supersede logical analysis.
Marcus saved me not because he calculated a high chance of survival, but because allowing me to die would have been unacceptable to his ethical framework. Marcus looked at Lyra with surprise.
He had never heard his motivations described in such analytical terms, but her explanation felt accurate in ways he couldn't articulate. This is why we wish to study human psychology more closely. Keeper Thalon continued. Your species has achieved remarkable things despite lacking many advantages that other spacefaring races possess. You have no telepathic abilities, limited lifespans, fragile physiology, and primitive technology.
Yet you continue to expand your influence and overcome obstacles that should be insurmountable. We're stubborn, Marcus said, echoing his earlier conversation with Lyra.
It is more than stubbornness. It is a fundamental refusal to accept limitations that other species consider absolute. When faced with impossible odds, humans often attempt the impossible anyway. Sometimes they fail spectacularly, but sometimes they achieve things that reshape our understanding of what is possible. The Purple Council member activated a holographic display that showed star charts spanning several sectors of the galaxy. Your species has been expanding into space for less than 2 centuries, yet you have established permanent settlements in regions that more advanced civilizations have deemed uninhabitable. You have survived first contact with 3 different hostile alien species and converted 2 of them into trading partners. Marcus studied the display, seeing human space from an outside perspective for the first time. It was humbling and oddly proud to see how far his species had come in such a short time. Which brings us to our proposal, Keeper Talon said. We believe that formal contact between our species could benefit both civilizations. The Velfara have knowledge and technology that could advance human development by centuries. In exchange, human psychology could help us overcome our own limitations. What kind of limitations? Marcus asked. Lyra answered, her voice growing thoughtful. We are a cautious people, Marcus. Some would say overly cautious. We spend decades studying problems before attempting solutions. We analyze every variable, calculate every risk, and proceed only when success is virtually guaranteed. This approach has allowed us to avoid many disasters, but it has also prevented us from achieving breakthroughs that require accepting significant risk. Your rescue of Lyra is a perfect example, added the Green Council member. A Velfara in your position would have spent hours gathering more information, analyzing structural integrity, and developing contingency plans. By the time we completed our analysis, Lyra would have been dead. Marcus began to understand the scope of what they were discussing. You want humans to teach you how to take risks? We want to learn how to make decisions based on moral imperatives rather than pure logic. Keeper Thalon clarified. We want to understand how your species balances emotion and reason in ways that produce positive outcomes. The offer they made was generous beyond Marcus's wildest dreams. A permanent position as cultural liaison, with quarters aboard their most advanced research vessel. Access to Balthara technology and scientific knowledge. Most importantly, the opportunity to work closely with Lyra on developing contact protocols between their species. But there was a catch, and Marcus suspected it was a significant one. The position would require you to undergo cognitive integration procedures, the Purple Council member explained. We would need to establish a limited telepathic link that would allow us to monitor your thought processes during decision-making scenarios. Marcus felt his blood chill. You want to read my mind? Not read. Exactly. The procedure would create a temporary connection that would allow us to observe your neural patterns during emotional and ethical decision-making. It would not give us access to your private thoughts or memories, but it would let us study how human psychology functions in real time. Lyra's grip on his hand tightened, and Marcus could see concern in her luminous eyes. Clearly, this aspect of the offer troubled her as much as it did him. Is the procedure reversible? Marcus asked. Yes, completely. The neural pathway modification can be undone at any time, leaving no permanent effects. And if I refuse the procedure but still want to work with you? The council members exchanged those meaningful glances again before Keeper Thalon responded. Without the cognitive integration, the scientific value of the collaboration would be severely limited. We would not be able to justify the resources required for the project. Marcus sat back in his living chair, feeling the weight of the decision settling on his shoulders. They were asking him to surrender the most fundamental privacy a person possessed in exchange for unprecedented opportunities. It was a devil's bargain wrapped in scientific necessity. I need time to consider this, he said finally. Of course, such a decision should not be made hastily. Keeper Thalon gestured toward Lyra. Perhaps our colleague could show you to guest quarters where you can rest and reflect. As they left the council chamber, Marcus felt the weight of alien expectations pressing down on him. The corridors of the Star Whisper seemed less welcoming now, more like the passages of an elaborate trap closing around him. You have reservations about the procedure, Lyra said as they walked toward what she called the habitat rings. Wouldn't you?
They're asking me to let them poke around inside my head. The cognitive integration is not invasive in the way you might imagine. It would be more like allowing them to observe your emotions through a window rather than entering your mind directly. Marcus stopped walking and turned to face her. You've undergone this procedure? All Veilthara undergo cognitive integration as children. It is how we develop our limited telepathic abilities. For us, it is as natural as learning to speak. But I'm not Veilthara. I'm human. We don't have telepathic abilities for a reason. Maybe our brains aren't meant to work that way.
Lyra's expression grew troubled. You are right to be cautious. The procedure has never been attempted on a human subject. There could be unforeseen complications. They reached the guest quarters, which turned out to be a luxurious suite that seemed to have been designed specifically for human needs. The furniture was recognizably human in style, though clearly made with advanced alien technology. Someone had taken great care to make him comfortable. This is beautiful, Marcus said, running his hand over a desk that felt like real wood but glowed with internal light. I designed it for you, Lyra admitted. And that blue flush colored her cheeks again. I wanted you to feel welcome here. The gesture touched him more deeply than he expected. In this vast alien ship full of incomprehensible technology and beings who thought in ways he couldn't fathom, she had created a space that felt like home. Lyra, he began, then struggled to find words for the question that had been growing in his mind. What happens to us if I agree to this? What happens to whatever is developing between us? She moved closer to him, and he could smell something like cinnamon and starlight on her skin. I do not know. Romantic relationships between different species are unprecedented in our history. There would be complications, social pressures, biological obstacles that we might not be able to overcome. And if I refuse the procedure and leave, then I would understand, but I would also be heartbroken. Her honesty was devastating in its simplicity. I have never felt for anyone what I feel for you, Marcus. When I thought I was dying, the last thing I expected was to find love among the stars. But that is what happened, whether it makes logical sense or not. Marcus reached out to touch her face, marveling at the way her skin seemed to glow brighter under his fingers. I love you too, he said, the words coming out more easily than he had expected. I know it's impossible and illogical and probably going to end a disaster, but I love you. When she kissed him, it was electric in ways that had nothing to do with alien physiology. It was the kiss of two souls who had found each other against impossible odds, who had chosen connection over safety, love over logic. When they broke apart, Marcus knew his decision had already been made. He would undergo the procedure, accept the risks, and trust that somehow they would find a way to make their impossible love story work. Outside the viewport, stars wheeled through space in patterns that neither of them could predict. But inside the quarters that Lyra had designed for him, surrounded by her warmth and the promise of a future they would build together, Marcus Chen felt truly at home for the first time in years. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers, but it was also full of unexpected kindness and impossible love. Sometimes that was enough. The Neural Integration Laboratory was a cathedral of living crystal and flowing light, its walls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that seemed to respond to Marcus's elevated heart rate. He sat in what the Veilthara called a harmony chair, its surface conforming to his body while microscopic tendrils made contact with specific points along his spine and skull. The sensation was alien but not unpleasant, like being embraced by warm water that could think. This is the book, it's about history. 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 Her skin bore the deep indigo coloration of a specialist with silver patterns that seemed to shift and dance as she worked. We are detecting strong neural activity in regions associated with protective instincts and emotional bonding. Marcus tried to remain calm as alien technology interfaced with his human nervous system. Beside him, Lyra monitored the readouts with obvious concern, her luminous eyes never leaving his face. How do you feel? She asked softly. Like I'm being studied by very polite scientists who could accidentally scramble my brain, Marcus replied, attempting humor to mask his anxiety. Your emotional state remains remarkably stable despite the stress of the situation. Doctor, Vela observed. This aligns with our preliminary observations about human psychological resilience. The procedure continued for what felt like hours but probably measured only minutes. Marcus found himself experiencing strange sensations as the Velthara technology mapped his neural pathways. Colors seemed brighter, sounds carried emotional overtones he had never noticed before, and he became acutely aware of the life signs of everyone in the room.
Fascinating, Dr. Vela murmured. Your brain is adapting to the neural link far more quickly than our models predicted. It appears that human neuroplasticity is even more pronounced than we suspected.
Is that good or bad? Marcus asked. It is unexpected. Your neural patterns are unlike anything we have observed in other species.
Where most beings show clear separation between logical and emotional processing centers, your brain demonstrates extensive integration between these systems. Keeper Thalon entered the laboratory as the procedure neared completion, his platinum markings glowing with what Marcus was beginning to recognize as intense interest.
What have you discovered? Something that challenges our fundamental understanding of consciousness itself, Dr. Vela replied. Human cognition appears to function as a unified system rather than discrete processing modules. Emotion and logic are not separate functions competing for dominance, but integrated aspects of a single decision-making matrix.
Marcus felt the final connections lock into place, and suddenly the emotional states of everyone in the room washed over him like a tide.
Dr. Vela's scientific excitement, Keeper Thalon's profound curiosity, Lyra's loving concern mixed with professional fascination. It was overwhelming and intimate and terrifying all at once. I can feel you, he whispered to Lyra, reaching out to touch her hand. All of you.
This is what telepathy feels like? A limited version, yes. You are experiencing the emotional resonance field that connects all Velthara.
But, Marcus, your neural pattern is affecting us as well. We can sense your emotional state with unprecedented clarity. And it was true. Marcus could feel their surprise, their wonder at the intensity and complexity of human emotion. To them, he realized, feelings had always been muted, carefully controlled impulses. They had never experienced the raw power of human passion, the overwhelming force of love and fear and hope that drove his species to impossible achievements. Now we begin the real work, Keeper Thalon announced. We will present you with various scenarios and observe how your decision-making process functions. Dr. Vela will monitor your neural patterns while the council analyzes your responses. The first scenario appeared as a holographic projection in the center of the room. A human colony ship was under attack by unknown raiders. 2 response options were available. Mount a rescue mission with low probability of success but potential to save lives, or evacuate the sector and preserve resources for future colonies. Marcus studied the tactical display, feeling the weight of virtual lives hanging in the balance. Through the neural link, he sensed the Velthara expecting him to choose the logical evacuation option. Their own analysis clearly favored preservation of resources over high-risk rescue attempts. I'd go after them, Marcus said without hesitation.
Even knowing that failure would likely result in the destruction of your own ship and crew? Dr. Vela asked.
Especially knowing that. Those colonists are counting on us. You don't abandon people just because the odds are bad. The Velthara researchers exchanged glances of amazement. Through the neural link, Marcus felt their confusion at his instant decision, their struggle to understand how he could choose potential disaster over logical safety. But the mathematical analysis clearly shows that evacuation preserves the greatest number of lives in the long term, Keeper Thalon pointed out. Mathematics don't factor in hope, Marcus replied. Sometimes the impossible rescue succeeds because somebody was willing to try. And even if it fails, the attempt itself matters. It tells the universe that we don't give up on each other. Dr. Vela's excitement spiked as she monitored his neural patterns. Remarkable. His emotional centers are not overriding logical analysis but enhancing it. The human brain appears capable of processing multiple probability matrices simultaneously, including variables that our computers cannot quantify. They presented scenario after scenario, each designed to test different aspects of human decision-making. A diplomatic crisis where violence seemed inevitable. A scientific expedition trapped by natural disaster. Resource allocation during famine. Each time Marcus found himself choosing options that the Velthara considered suboptimal by logical standards, but which felt absolutely right to his human sensibilities. And each time the alien researchers grew more amazed by the complexity and integration of human psychological processes. We have been approaching consciousness incorrectly, Keeper Thalon admitted as the session concluded. We assumed that advanced intelligence required the separation of emotion and logic, but humans demonstrate that the integration of these systems produces superior results in unpredictable environments. Superior how? Marcus asked, feeling mentally drained by hours of constant monitoring. Your species consistently achieves positive outcomes in scenarios that our models classify as impossible. You succeed not despite your emotional decision-making, but because of it.
Emotion provides information that pure logic cannot access. As the neural integration equipment powered down, Marcus felt the constant awareness of others' emotions fade to a whisper. The experience had been profound and exhausting, like seeing color for the first time only to return to a world of black and white. "How do you bear it?" he asked Lyra as they left the laboratory together.
Feeling everyone's emotions all the time? We do not experience emotions as intensely as you do, she replied. For us, they are subtle currents, rather than powerful storms.
Your emotional range is far broader and deeper than anything in our psychology. They walked through the ship's garden levels, where Veilthara botanists had cultivated plants from dozens of worlds in a symphony of alien beauty.
Marcus found the peaceful environment soothing after the intensity of the research session. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now the Council analyzes the data and determines how to proceed with first contact protocols. Your participation has already provided insights that will revolutionize our understanding of consciousness and decision-making." Marcus sat on a bench beside a fountain that played with liquid light instead of water, watching Lyra's reflection dance in the luminous streams. "And what about us? What happens with us?" Lyra sat beside him, close enough that he could feel the warmth of her skin. "That is more complicated. The Council is fascinated by the bond between us, but they are also concerned about its implications." "Concerned how?" "Romantic relationships between species are unprecedented in galactic history. There are questions about biological compatibility, psychological consequences, and social implications that no one knows how to answer." Marcus took her hand, marveling again at how perfectly their fingers interlocked despite their different origins. "Do you care what they think? About the scientific implications, yes, of course. But about my feelings for you?" She turned to face him fully, her luminous eyes reflecting the garden's bioluminescent glow. "No. I know what I feel, Marcus. I know that you have changed me in ways I cannot explain or quantify. I know that when I look at you, I see not an alien but the person who risked everything to save me." "Then that's enough," Marcus said simply. "We'll figure out the rest as we go." Their kiss was interrupted by a gentle chime from Lyra's communication device. She checked the message with obvious reluctance. "The Council wants to see you again," she said. "They have reached some preliminary conclusions about the research data." Marcus felt a flutter of anxiety in his stomach. That was fast. Too fast, perhaps. "Come, let us see what they have decided." The Council chamber had been reconfigured since their last meeting, with additional displays showing complex neural pattern analysis and psychological matrices that Marcus couldn't begin to understand. The 5 Council members looked simultaneously excited and troubled, their skin patterns shifting with barely contained emotion. "Marcus Chen," Keeper Thalen began, "your participation in our research has yielded results far beyond our expectations. The data you have provided will revolutionize our understanding of consciousness, decision-making, and the nature of intelligence itself." "I'm glad I could help," Marcus replied carefully, sensing that significant revelations were coming. "However, we have also discovered something that presents us with an unprecedented challenge. The neural integration procedure has revealed that your bond with Lyra is not merely emotional, but has begun to develop telepathic components." Marcus felt his world shift slightly. "What does that mean? Dr. Christ." Vela stepped forward, her expression grave. "It means that prolonged exposure to Veilthara neural patterns is beginning to alter your brain structure. You are developing limited telepathic abilities that should be impossible for human neurology." "Is that dangerous?" Marcus asked, though he suspected he didn't want to know the answer. "We do not know," Keeper Thalen admitted. "This has never happened before. The changes appear stable, but we cannot predict their long-term consequences." Marcus looked at Lyra, seeing fear and guilt warring in her expression. "You knew this might happen. I suspected it was possible," she said quietly. "The strength of my emotional response to you suggested that our bond was deeper than normal interpersonal connection. But I did not know for certain until the integration data was analyzed." "So what are my options?" Marcus asked, though he was beginning to understand the scope of the problem. "We can attempt to reverse the changes, Dr. Stenger.
Bela said. The procedure would likely be successful, but it would also sever the developing telepathic bond between you and Lyra permanently. And if I choose not to reverse it, then you become the first human telepath, with all the unknown consequences that entails. You would be pioneering uncharted territory in consciousness itself. Marcus sat in silence, processing the magnitude of what he was being asked to decide. Accept surgical modification to return to normal human limitations, or embrace an uncertain future as something new and unprecedented. Through the fading Neuralink, he could feel Lyra's anguish at having inadvertently placed him in this position. Her love for him warred with her fear for his safety, creating an emotional storm that threatened to overwhelm them both. There is one more thing you should know, Keeper Thalon said gently. If you choose to retain the modifications, you would become invaluable to both species as the first successful example of human Valthara neural integration. You would be the bridge between our civilizations, the proof that cooperation is possible. Marcus closed his eyes and felt the weight of history settling on his shoulders. Two species, two different approaches to consciousness and existence, looking to him to help them understand each other. It was a responsibility he had never sought, but could not ethically refuse. When he opened his eyes, he saw Lyra watching him with desperate hope and terrible fear. Whatever he decided would shape not only their future together, but the future relationship between their species. The choice before him was impossible, and therefore perfectly suited to human psychology. He smiled and took Lyra's hand, feeling the telepathic whisper of her love flowing through the connection between their minds. 6 months after his transformation, Marcus stood on the observation deck of the newly commissioned vessel Harmony, watching Earth grow larger in the view screen. The ship itself was a marvel of combined human and Valthara engineering, its hull flowing like liquid metal while its internal systems operated on principles of rugged practicality that any human engineer would recognize. It was beautiful and functional, emotional and logical, a perfect symbol of what their two species could achieve together. Beside him, Lyra watched the blue-white marble of humanity's homeworld, with wonder. Her telepathic abilities allowed her to sense the emotional resonance of billions of humans living their lives in the planet's embrace, a chaotic symphony of hope and fear and love that both thrilled and overwhelmed her sensitive mind. So many of them, she murmured, her hand finding his automatically. I can feel their dreams from here. Marcus smiled, his own enhanced perceptions allowing him to share her wonder while providing the emotional stability that helped her process the intensity. The neural modifications had changed him in ways that continued to surprise the Valthara researchers, but the fundamental core of his humanity remained intact. If anything, his capacity for emotion had deepened, his ability to empathize and connect strengthened by his telepathic abilities. They're going to love you, he said, squeezing her fingers gently, and if they do not, then they'll learn to. Humans are adaptable that way. Captain Sarah Martinez emerged from the command center, her expression mixing professional confidence with barely contained excitement. She was one of the first humans to undergo the cultural liaison training program that Marcus had helped develop, and her natural diplomatic skills had made her the obvious choice to captain humanity's first joint species vessel. We're receiving communication requests from 17 different Earth governments, 12 major news networks, and what appears to be a fan club. Word of our arrival preceded us by several hours, Marcus chuckled. I told the Valthara Council that humans don't do anything quietly. We're going to be celebrities whether we want to be or not. The past 6 months had been a whirlwind of preparation for this moment. Marcus had worked tirelessly with both human and Valthara diplomatic teams to develop first contact protocols that honored the traditions and concerns of both species. It had been challenging work, complicated by the fact that he was simultaneously pioneering new forms of consciousness and navigating his evolving relationship with Lyra. The neural integration had stabilized after the first month, leaving him with telepathic abilities that were limited but profound. He could share thoughts and emotions with other telepathic beings, sense the general emotional state of groups, and most importantly, maintain a constant connection with Lyra that transcended physical distance. The Valthara researchers had declared him a successful proof of concept, though they admitted they still didn't fully understand how his human brain had adapted to telepathic function. Incoming transmission from the United Earth Authority, Captain Martinez announced. They're requesting permission to send a formal greeting delegation aboard. Tell them yes, but keep the initial group small, Marcus replied. Lyra is still adjusting to human emotional intensity. The crowd might overwhelm her. Through their bond, he felt Lyra's gratitude for his consideration. The connection between them had evolved beyond simple telepathy into something deeper, a sharing of consciousness that allowed them to support and strengthen each other in ways that neither species had thought possible. The docking procedures took place at Orbital Station 1, humanity's premier diplomatic facility. As the Harmony settled into its berth, Marcus could see crowds gathering at the observation windows, humans straining to catch their first glimpse of the aliens who had come in friendship rather than conquest. The greeting ceremony was carefully choreographed to honor both human and Velthara customs.
Keeper Talon, who had traveled from Velthara space specifically for this historic moment, exchanged ritual gestures with Secretary General Chen, no relation despite the shared surname. Lyra presented a crystalline artwork that contained telepathically imprinted messages of goodwill from her people, while the human delegation offered a collection of music and literature that represented the breadth of human creativity.
But for all the formal protocol, Marcus knew the real work would begin in the smaller meetings that followed. The Velthara had questions about human psychology, economics, and social structures. Humans wanted to know about Velthara technology, philosophy, and their place in the larger galactic community. Both species were curious about the possibilities for cooperation and the potential risks of closer contact. The preliminary discussions have gone better than expected, Secretary General Chen told Marcus during a break between sessions. Your reports prepared us well for their communication style and cultural priorities, but there's one question that keeps coming up in our internal discussions. What's that? You and Lyra. The relationship between you represents something unprecedented in galactic history. Our xenobiologists are fascinated by the implications, but our social scientists are concerned about the broader consequences. Marcus had expected this conversation.
What kind of consequences? If romantic relationships between species become common, it could fundamentally alter both societies in ways we can't predict. Some of our advisors worry about genetic compatibility issues, cultural contamination, and the potential for social instability.
And what do you worry about? Marcus asked. Secretary General Chen smiled.
I worry that we're overthinking something that should be simple. You saved her life, you fell in love, and you found a way to make it work despite impossible odds. That sounds like the most human story ever told. Through his enhanced senses, Marcus could feel the Secretary General's genuine warmth and acceptance. It was a reminder of why he had chosen to retain his modifications despite the risks. The ability to directly perceive the emotions and intentions of others had proven invaluable in diplomatic negotiations, allowing him to bridge misunderstandings before they could escalate into conflicts. That evening, Marcus and Lyra walked through the station's recreation section, marveling at how easily humans and Velthara were beginning to interact. The initial nervousness on both sides was giving way to curiosity and cautious friendship. He watched a group of human children teaching Velthara youngsters how to play zero-gravity tag, their laughter echoing through the corridors in perfect harmony. They adapt quickly, Lyra observed, her telepathic abilities allowing her to sense the joy and wonder flowing from both groups. Kids always do. They haven't learned to be afraid of differences yet. Is that what you think this is about? Learning not to be afraid? Marcus considered the question as they found a quiet observation lounge overlooking Earth.
I think it's about learning that differences can be strengths instead of threats. Your people are cautious and analytical. Mine are impulsive and emotional.
Separately, both approaches have limitations. Together, they might be perfect.
Like us, Lyra said softly. Like us. She moved closer to him, and he wrapped his arms around her, feeling the familiar warmth of her presence both physically and mentally.
Through their bond, he could sense her contentment, her amazement at how far they had traveled from that moment when she was dying in a collapsed alien ship and he was just a desperate salvage operator with a good heart. Marcus, she said, her voice carrying a note of nervous excitement that made him instantly alert. What is it? The medical research team has completed their analysis of our bonding process. Vela believes that our neural integration represents a new form of consciousness that could be replicated in other human Velthara pairs. Marcus felt his heart skip a beat.
What are you saying?
I am saying that we may not be unique for much longer. If others choose to undergo the bonding process, there could be dozens, perhaps hundreds of human Velthara couples within the next few years.
The implications were staggering. A new subspecies of consciousness emerging from the fusion of human emotion and Velthara telepathy. Children who might inherit abilities from both parents, growing up truly bilingual in both technology and empathy. A generation that could serve as permanent bridges between the species, making conflict nearly impossible and cooperation natural. How do you feel about that? Marcus asked. Terrified and exhilarated in equal measure, Lyra admitted. We would be pioneers of something unprecedented in galactic history. Our children would be the first of their kind. Our children? Marcus echoed, his heart racing.
Lyra's blush was visible even in the dim observation lounge lighting.
Dr. Vela believes that reproduction between bonded pairs would be possible with certain medical interventions. The genetic compatibility issues are not insurmountable.
Marcus pulled back to look at her face, seeing hope and uncertainty warring in her luminous eyes. Is that what you want? Children with me?
I want everything with you, Marcus.
I want a future where our love creates something beautiful and new. I want to grow old together watching the galaxy become a kinder place because we proved that differences can become strengths. When he kissed her, Marcus could feel not just her love but her vision of their future flowing through their telepathic bond. Children with human hearts and Valfara wisdom, playing in gardens on worlds yet to be discovered.
A galaxy where cooperation replaced suspicion, where the impossible became routine, where love truly could conquer all.
Yes,
He whispered against her lips.
Yes to all of it. Outside the observation lounge, Earth continued its ancient rotation, unaware that its future was being reshaped by the love between a stubborn human and an alien woman who had taught him that the most important decisions were the ones that made no logical sense at all. The stars wheeled overhead in patterns that human and Valthara astronomers were learning to read together, mapping courses to worlds that would soon know the footsteps of hybrid children who embodied the best qualities of both species.
Marcus Chen had started this journey as a failed miner turned desperate salvage operator, alone in the vast emptiness of space. He was ending it as the father of a new form of consciousness, surrounded by love and possibility and the absolute certainty that the universe was far more welcoming than he had ever dared to believe.
Sometimes the greatest rescues were mutual, and sometimes the most impossible love stories were the ones that rewrote the future of entire civilizations. In the distance, communication arrays carried news of the successful first contact across human space, while Valthara ships prepared to welcome the first human ambassadors to their distant worlds. Trade agreements were drafted, cultural exchanges planned, and scientific collaborations initiated. But in a quiet observation lounge overlooking humanity's birth world, two beings who had found each other across the impossible vastness of space simply held each other and dreamed of the tomorrow they would build together, one impossible decision at a time.
The galaxy was indeed a kinder place than either of them had believed, and love, it turned out, really could change everything.